Step Ahead, the Central Asia podcast, with insights from the heart of Eurasia.
A warm welcome to the first episode of the Step Ahead podcast. In this podcast, we want to talk about trends, economic trends in Central Asia. I'm very honored today that we have two guests on the podcast. My name is Thomas Bayer. I'm a little bit the moderator of this podcast because we have two great experts. I'm talking about Thorsten Gutmann. He's right now in Astana, and Jonas Brien. He's also an expert on Central Asia. He's focused on the region. My name is Thomas Bayer, and I'm the editor-in-chief and founder of economies.com. And Thorsten, right now the world is burning. It's a very dark day, basically. We see the news. Many people are dying in Iran, but also in the region adjacent to Iran. How is the situation right now in Central Asia? It's not too far away. Even Turkmenistan shares a border with Iran. You are right now directly in Astana, the capital of beautiful Kazakhstan. How are people in the streets? What can you tell us about the situation there?
Yes, thank you, Thomas. Hello from Astana. I think we have minus 15 degrees right now. It's snowing as usual, and the situation in Astana is calm, of course, because what is going on in Iran is geographically far, but still, of course, there's a lot of impact. And of course, the leaders of the Central Asian countries, they're looking on this, what is going on in the world. And speaking of Kazakhstan and of Central Asia in general, these are landlocked countries. Yes, so you need to cross another country to reach the open ocean. So those countries are very dependent on other countries, on borders. And there's, for example, this Turkmenistan-Iran railway, which leads to Kazakhstan, which connects Kazakhstan to the Indian Ocean. Yes, so of course, right now I've read that I think 50 or even 60% of the freight volume is decreased. And of course, the leaders are looking at what is going on. We're talking, for example, to the leader of Azerbaijan, also worried about what is going on there. So, of course, you can feel something, and I think we will soon feel something when we look at the inflation, when we look at the prices, because on one hand, Kazakhstan is an oil exporter, and they will profit from the higher prices. But I think all in all, the situation is also not good for Kazakhstan because, for example, the prices for fuel will be much higher, and in general, like a lot of products are imported, and they will become more expensive and will raise the inflation even stronger. Yeah, so this is a big problem, I think.
It's very good to hear that the situation is calm in general. And regarding the structure of the podcast, it's a new podcast, so we have to tell a little bit the audience what we plan to do with this podcast. Everybody of us has one story today to talk about. I, for example, will talk later about the situation that you already talked about a little bit with Iran and so on. What will be the effect for Kazakhstan? What will be the effect for the region in general? You mentioned the oil price. We will talk later about it in my section of this podcast. What are your stories that you want to talk today about? Maybe Jonas, you can tell yours, and then Thorsten, you can start with your first story.
Yes, thank you very much, Thomas. So I would like to take a little look back on what has been before. In the west of Kazakhstan, there's the famous Aral Sea, the once fourth biggest lake in the world, which was disappearing over the last decades due to irrigation projects and like Soviet gigantic cotton projects in also Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan. And I would like to take a look at that famous pictures that we all have probably seen of former ships on the desert ground, and would like to understand if this is still the case or if there are certain positive developments regarding this once fourth biggest lake in the world. So my part will share this kind of story. Back to you. So what did you bring for us?
So my story is that I am here right now. Maybe some words about myself. It has been quite hectically in the previous months because I was moving from Germany to Tashkent. 1 month later, I've moved to Astana, and today actually I'm moving again to another apartment in Astana. So I'm working here in the show industry, like exhibition industry. So we're doing industrial exhibitions, and I can I can see a lot about what is going on right now in Central Asia. Myself personally, I have a very big interest in this region. So, for example, on LinkedIn, I'm posting almost daily about business news, about economical news, because I think this region is one of the most promising regions in the world, and I think this region is very underestimated right now, and it offers huge potential for German investors, for European investors. And I think this is my story, yes, that I see Central Asia as a very, very promising region and interesting region.
What I find very interesting, you were understating a little bit what you're doing, because you're not just posting on LinkedIn. I think you're one of the biggest influencer accounts right now, especially in the German-speaking world. Maybe you can tell us, how did this happen? Why is there so much interest? You have thousands of followers. How many? 6,000 or something? So tell us a little bit why you think that people are so focused right now on Central Asia.
I think first off, it's a niche. So not many people are posting, writing about Central Asia. And for example, when I was living in Germany and I told my friends and colleagues that I will move to Tashkent, they were telling me, where is this? Like they didn't know where it is. So I think this is something very, very new still. So the focus is not there. So I was lucky to get into a niche, and I think it's very obvious why the interest is rising, because we are talking about decoupling, about de-risking strategies for German and for European businesses. So it started everything with China, then it started with COVID. There was a big problem with the deliveries from China, and then, of course, Russia. The war happened in 2022. So German and European companies and the politicians are thinking about diversification. This is necessary, and I think it's very, very logical step to look at Central Asia. If you look, for example, at Uzbekistan, the GDP is rapidly increasing, and also the population is increasing. So right now, I think the population of Uzbekistan is 35 million, and until 2050, there will be 50 million people living in Uzbekistan. It's actually a huge market, an unexplored market. And I think German businesses, European businesses have huge potential to invest and to trade with those countries.
Yes, maybe we can start with my story as well, the story that I brought today. Everybody is focusing right now on the implications of the Iran war. And of course, it's very shocking what is happening. There doesn't seem to be really a plan and so on. So we don't go into this, but we want to really focus on the economic ramifications for Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan, and Tajikistan. And I follow on X one German analyst. His name is Jonas Kluge. He is working for the German government think tank, Stiftung Wissenschaft und Politik, SWP. He's considered one of the German experts on the former Soviet Union. And he posted something that is very interesting yesterday. He said that a 1% drop in oil supply means roughly a 10% rise in oil prices in the short term. So what does it mean? Through the Strait of Hormuz that is now closed in 2024, about 20 million barrels were moved daily. The oil market is very interesting because we have basically 100 million barrels per day that are moved around. So 20 million barrels are 20%. So according to Jonas Kluge, who's really a calm, measured German expert, the most German expert you can imagine, according to this guy, oil prices will not just rise, they will rise to over $200 per barrel. And this is something we have never seen. So let's talk about the ramifications of such an increase in the oil price. And let's focus on what it means for each of these countries. I would say basically it's very negative for two countries already, for Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan. Tajikistan has very close cultural ties also to Iran because they speak a very similar language, in contrast to the other countries who speak Turkic, as I understand, Turkic language. And Tajikistan will be majorly affected. Also, Turkmenistan, as Thorsten already mentioned, they share a border, not just a small border, it's a 1,000 kilometers or even more, 1,200 kilometer border. And as we saw, all the countries surrounding the region, not just the Gulf countries, also Azerbaijan, also Turkey, have to deal with the ramifications of missile attacks, of drone attacks. So, a very difficult situation for Turkmenistan because of that. And when we look at how much the oil price could affect these countries that are importing, I'm talking about Tajikistan, I'm talking about Kyrgyzstan, especially, those countries could be hit by a major wave of inflation. $200 or even $250 per barrel would be catastrophic. It would be a decline in GDP. It would be basically a world economic crisis that we are facing. And countries that are importing their energy, they are majorly affected. How is the picture for Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan and Kazakhstan? It's a little bit mixed. I would say no country is really benefiting directly because we are charting terra incognita. We are on uncharted waters with this crisis. And even a country such as Kazakhstan that exports oil, that exports gas, it's not a clear-cut case that it's bullish for them. Maybe in the short term, when the prices rise so high, but also the insurance costs are going up. Maybe the demand, world economic demand will crater. So it's not even for them such a positive case. And when we look at the numbers, and we see how dependent, for example, Kazakhstan is on the oil exports. It was around 15% of GDP, gas around 2%. So in general, the export of these resources accounts for 70% of the GDP. It's not that much. It's even less than in Russia. In Russia, it's a little bit. If I know, maybe I'm wrong. I don't want to put this point out completely, but I think it's not that much as some people expect. So yes, Kazakhstan profits in the short term, but even for the country that maybe profits the most, Kazakhstan, it's not a clear-cut case. It's not just a bullish case with in uncharted waters. And Turkmenistan, the same story. Yes, Turkmenistan is a major gas exporter, and yes, it will rise in importance because Qatar LNG, liquefied natural gas from Qatar, is shut in. They cannot just bring it back. It's shut in for many months. Qatar finance minister was saying the other day that the world is expecting a major economic crisis, that oil prices can hit 150 and so on. But Turkmenistan will rise its profile. It will become a much more important player on the world stage because everybody needs gas. If you have no Qatar gas anymore, people are even talking about Russian gas again for Europe. Even the Norwegians were mentioning this. And if they are talking about even Russian gas, everybody will run to Turkmenistan and wants to get some part of the gas that they offer. So yes, Turkmenistan will rise in profile. Yes, they will become a much more important geo-economic player. But also for Turkmenistan, the risks are enormous. As we mentioned, it's the country closest to the action right now, to the war. Uzbekistan is a very interesting case as well. Yes, they are also exporting a little bit of gas, if I understand correctly, but much less than Turkmenistan or Kazakhstan. So my ranking is the following. Two countries are really negatively impacted, very bearish. I am for Kyrgyzstan and for Tajikistan, the smallest economies in the region. And unfortunately, some experts say they will have big problems because they import all their energy, basically. Then Uzbekistan is a mixed case. Yes, they are not so dependent as the other two mentioned, but also they are a manufacturing country. I think probably the most manufacturing-based focused country in the region. And then we have, of course, two countries that might profit in the short term. mostly Turkmenistan and Kazakhstan. But even for them, the risks are enormous, enormous risks, and no country that is focused on exporting energy can be seen as a safe bet right now. What is your take on this?
Just as a question, so you basically mentioned in your ranking that it depends basically on the openness of the economy and the energy source the country has. So while on the other hand, Kazakhstan is a rather rich country regarding oil and gas, Tajikistan is rather poor, and this also has a big influence on your ranking, right?
For sure, for sure. My ranking is based on which countries are energy independent to some extent, and which countries are mostly dependent on energy imports. And also, of course, we have to talk about logistics. As Thorsten mentioned, the region is basically landlocked. So the port of the Iranian port, what's it called? Bandar Abbas, I think it's called. Don't Google it for sure, but I think it's called Bandar Abbas. It's a very important hub for transshipments to Turkmenistan, especially. I think, Thorsten, you mentioned there's a rail line between Turkmenistan and Iran, and I think it's going
Yes,
to the
the
port.
Kazakhstan-Turkmenistan-Iran railway, and I think it's called Chabahar, the port, the Iranian port, which is connected to the Indian Ocean. So yeah, this is a problem, and I think if we look at transport corridors, there will be one corridor which will profit for 100%, and this is the middle corridor. So everyone is talking about the middle corridor right now. It's a big hype, but actually it's true. For example, if you look right now at the flights, international flights, because of everything what is going on in Dubai and Qatar, basically all the planes between Europe and Asia are flying over Azerbaijan, Armenia, Georgia, so over the Caucasian countries. And the same goes for the logistics, from China to Europe. So I think it's going from the route is from China to Kazakhstan over the Caspian Sea to Azerbaijan, from there to Georgia, and from Georgia to all other European countries. So I think this middle corridor will profit, and I think I've read somewhere that since early 2026, the logistics, the freight volumes over the middle corridor have increased by approximately 30%. Yeah, so this is very significant. And right now, as far as I know, it takes around 14 days to deliver something from China via the middle corridor to Europe. And I think with everything what is going on, this will increase. And I think this is also something the European Union, for example, they are investing in logistics in Kazakhstan, also in Uzbekistan, through the EU Global Gateway Program. So this is also maybe something like an alternative to the New Silk Road, China's New Silk Road. And it's interesting what is happening right now. And of course, we don't know if it will be sustainable, but yeah, it's definitely interesting takeaway right now.
I have a question regarding the situation right now in Central Asia when it comes to deliveries. Where is most food stuff, etc., coming in? Or is it grown in Kazakhstan itself? Because we have this problem in the JCC countries. They were very reliant, right, on food imports. So the situation in Central Asia is completely different, right? There we have food security. And where are the imports coming in Central Asia right now?
Well, I can tell you from my daily life that it's hard to find some products in Kazakhstan. For example, when we're talking about fresh meat, like real good meat, like you know it from Germany, for example, it's very hard to find. Yeah, most of it is frozen, and the quality varies very strongly. So when we're talking about food, for example, Kazakhstan still heavily is relying on imports. I think the strongest player is Russia. So when we're talking about dairy or also about meat, about sausages, it's coming from Russia. If we're talking about fruits and vegetables, I think the Central Asian countries are very strong here, especially Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan, and I think like tomatoes and cucumbers and everything. Also, of course, melons are imported from Uzbekistan, and of course China. Yeah, so if we're talking about crops and bread, like what you need to produce bread, for example, it's coming from China, and also I think Belarus is an important player. But Kazakhstan, and I know that the president, Mr. Tokayev, said several times that it is very, very important to become independent. The policy of import substitution, which we know from Russia, is now being also implemented in Kazakhstan. So they're trying to actually localize the whole cycle of food production in Kazakhstan. But of course, this will be a very, very long way to go still. Yeah, so Kazakhstan is heavily dependent still on imports, also when we're talking about food. And of course, I think the Iran conflict right now will also lead to higher prices for food.
Very interesting. Maybe we can jump to the next topic already, because we want to keep the episodes concise. We don't want to just have another talking podcast without the structure, without interesting facts. So, Jonas, you brought a story about the Aral Sea, right? It's a timeless topic, and maybe you can end the episode right there.
Yes, thank you very much. So, with having the Iranian conflict right now in mind, we understand that there's a lot of developments going on. Like, even such a conflict has a big influence on the region of Central Asia. But regarding all these developments that you're mentioning, so raw materials, but also food production is highly dependent on the existence of water in the region. So water is a topic we will cover in another episode, I think. But for now, I just want to take you with me on a quick tour through the last 60, 70 years of this Aral Sea, which used to be the fourth biggest lake in the world. For all German listeners, it was around as big as the state of Bavaria, so the biggest state of Germany, 68,000 square kilometers. There were two major important rivers giving the water to this bigger lake located between Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, which were called Amu Darya and Sir-Darya. And the interesting thing is the Soviet Union tried to implement different kinds of irrigation projects in order to boost the crop and the especially cotton production. Some of the coat of arms, for example, of Uzbekistan still have cotton in it from the Soviet time. So they tried to build in these desert places where water was very rarely different kinds of production, which led to a very rapid drop in water level. So we talk now, especially during the 1960s and 1980s, of around a loss of half of the original size. In the 2000s, there was another, let's say, negative point until Kazakhstan started to build a dam. Because of the irrigation, the whole lake was basically split into two parts. The northern part located in Kazakhstan and the southern in Uzbekistan. And Kazakhstan was actually trying to stop the irrigation and the lake to completely disappear. Because by the year 2000, 90% of the whole water disappeared. And as environmental standards were not as high in Soviet Union, and there was a biological crisis, disaster, because of the loss of biodiversity, first of all, but also because of different minerals, materials, which were usually in the lake itself, which were therefore on land, creating actually toxic storms, which were harming the people living around the lake and so on. But since the early 2000s, especially 2005, there was this Kok-Aral Dam, which is partially recovering the whole lake, especially, as I mentioned, in Kazakhstan, which is leading to rising water levels, lower like salt level, it's called salinity level, and even the return of certain fish species. And while there was one book I was recently reading about a young journalist traveling in 2012 to the region, telling about all the horrible stories in this past, I would say, fishing resorts and even touristic places. It looks like it looked really like forgotten, lost places because there was like a tourist place with promenades with like people, the places you would imagine next to the river, being in the middle of nowhere. This is not the case anymore right now. We are not talking about how it was before the 1960s, but it's somehow recovering. Here, Kazakhstan showed that, due to the availability of water management and of irrigation projects. And what is most important, since all the rivers were coming from the mountain areas, it is important that Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan, especially, and Tajikistan handle this water issue together. And we see, especially Thorsten saw this the other days, following his news updates on LinkedIn, there is increased regional cooperation. And this is actually leading to a recovery of the whole lake. And I just want to end with one fun fact. Thomas asked about how much percent of the food is coming from international places and so on. And I just wanted to say that around 10% of Kazakhstan's fish supply is currently coming from the Aral Sea. So significant recovery here.
Jonas, thank you very much. This is super interesting. And I remember that I've been last summer in Tashkent. I've been to exhibition which was exactly about this topic, nature. And I remember one quote from the Uzbek president, Mr. Mirziyoyev. And he said that what happened to the Aral Sea is one of the biggest ecological disasters of our time. And this it's a global problem which must be solved. And what is very interesting, you just told that in Kazakhstan there is a very serious success for returning the water level. Of course, it will never be like it used to be, but still the water is increasing, and also it's possible like the fish are returning to the Aral Sea, which of course is a very good news. And I've read that in Uzbekistan, those dry places, well, this Aral Kum, this new desert on the ground of the sea, it's called Aral Kum, and now they want to build or to create a forest on this desert. And I think
that is completely right. I even know there's called this soxal tree. It's a special kind of like desert tree which they are building and planting there to recreate the Sir Daria delta wetlands, forming like a wetland similar maybe to Astrakhan, so where all goes into the Caspian Sea, or what is very famous is from the Nile River coming into the Mediterranean Sea. So maybe, we have some new biological natural park coming in soon.
Yes. Maybe some fun fact or something very interesting. There's this place called Moynak, I think, in Uzbek language, and it used to be a big port, a city with a big port, and today it's like more of a graveyard, ship graveyard. And then it's a big tourist attraction right now with an airport, with hotels, and there's some kind of like disaster tourism, which also created new jobs. And this is something, if you ever happen to be in this region, this is something very interesting to look at.
Yes, so to wrap it up, in this first episode, we talked about two kind of sad stories. We talked about the war affecting the region, and we talked about one of the biggest man-made natural disasters in the world, the Aral Sea. It's not called the Aral Lake, it's called the Aral Sea. Very important to remember. But there's a silver lining. There's a silver lining. We see the cooperation between the countries, and we see that even from this disaster, something positive can maybe come out in the future. Are there some final words you guys want to say? For my part, this is what I take away. Cooperation is needed, not just for the ecological disaster, but now also for the economic storm that is coming, that is affecting the region. But the region can weather the storm if they cooperate.
Maybe just a couple of words regarding what you said. Yes, definitely. I think the Central Asian countries already understood that the cooperation is needed. So this C5+1 format, it's called, between the Central Asian countries and the United States, for example. It really is gaining significance, and I think the Central Asian bloc understood that they must cooperate, and that they are stronger together, and I think this is a very, very positive perspective for the future.
And just one aspect from my side, what we see already now, you are mentioning food supplies, Thomas, about what is going on in Central Asia. I was recently writing a short analysis about food in Kazakhstan, and Kazakhstan actually became an exporter for some food products, especially for meat, for the Middle East also. And you can see that the region is not potentially playing a role in the world, but it is already now. We don't see it maybe, and they are not as big in total as maybe China or India, but we can see that there is significance in this region.
Thank you guys for sharing your expertise. Thorsten in the region, Jonas also works with the region. And
Thank you.
for me, it was highly enlightening. I hope we can keep it up. I hope it's not the only episode. I hope we continue with some episodes. And
I think
yeah,
the
this
pipe
was
is good, and we need to continue. Yeah.
exactly. And yeah, thanks for listening. And hear you next time.